Did your ancestors come to America through Ellis Island? Well, perhaps you're not sure. Today, we're talking with Jackie Schalk. She is the director of the American Family Immigration History Center for the Statue of Liberty and Ellis Island Foundation. Now, in this interview, she gives us a brief history of Ellis Island and how to research those records and what some of the markings, abbreviations, and stamps mean on those records and really how to make sense of it all. Also, you'll want to watch the entire video as she has some really great stories to talk about a little bit later on in the video about, well, really, it's kind of about how the immigrants went through the process at Ellis Island and kind of some of their experience. Some really worthy stories worth sticking around for. All right, lastly, if you visit their website, consider a donation to the foundation. All right, Jackie is a wealth of information. We're going to get to it here in just a moment. We'll be right back. I'm super excited about this conversation I had with Jackie about Ellis Island, but before we get to it, let me introduce myself. If this is your first time here, my name is Connie Knox. I am a lifelong genealogist here to help you go further faster and factually with your family research. Don't forget there is a website, a newsletter, and Facebook page. Make sure you're hooked up with all of those. If you click in the description below this video, you'll get links for everything that we talk about. Hey, and if you like the video, share it about. Please tell others about Genealogy TV. And don't forget to subscribe and ring the bell so that you get notified each time I upload a video. If you're finding value in this and any of the videos on Genealogy TV, please consider becoming a channel member and help support the channel. And lastly, if you need help, I do coaching. And so if you want some individual coaching or group coaching, options are available at genealogytv.org. So again, links for everything I'm talking about here are in the description box below the video. All right, let's jump into it. Jackie, welcome to Genealogy TV. I'm so glad you're here, and we're so excited to learn a little bit about Ellis Island. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. Hello from Ellis Island.
Oh, yes. Yes, and you know, it's a little different these days with the pandemic and everything, and people are, you know, researching from home. So I imagine that Ellis Island is probably closed right now.
It is. It's closed to the public.
Yeah. So, well, give us a little history about Ellis Island, and for those who are not familiar.
Ellis Island was the largest port. It opened in 1892, January. Annie Moore was the first immigrant. I mean, those are kind of the stories we do know about Ellis Island. Many times people will confuse Ellis Island with Castle Garden. Castle Garden opened from 1820 to what is the period of 1891. Technically, it was the barge office in between as Ellis Island was being built. And the reasons because immigration was always state-run, and then it was not until 1892 when Ellis Island opened that it was federally controlled. Organizations through the government, such as like INS and such, were developed in time. We've always used the phrase that over 40% of all Americans can trace their family through Ellis Island. I don't know if that's necessarily true today as it was when we first opened the American Family Immigration History Center in 2001, but we can certainly say with certainty that most will have at least one person in their family that came through Ellis Island. All of my family came through the Port of New York, in fact. So, it's because it was the peak time for immigration. A lot was happening in American history. That brought people from all over, really all over the world, not just from Europe, but from all over, whether it was persecution or war or poverty. There was many reasons for the flight to the Golden Door. And, you know, I was just talking to a friend yesterday about how, depending on what time in your life, like how old you are, demographic, what the Statue of Liberty means to you today, and what Ellis Island in turn means to you today. For my generation, it was still the golden door, but now it means so much more to all of us. So it's very interesting.
You have a great job.
I know.
I mean, it couldn't have been. I was sitting there thinking about it. What a fun job you have.
Yeah.
So, question: immigrants came through Ellis Island from 1820 to, was it 1957?
So that's New York's port that there's actually records. Records
Okay.
from 1820 to 1957 on our website. But of course, they expand beyond that. I believe online you can go as far as 1960. Some are digitized now through Family Search.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
All right. And well, how many people passed through Ellis Island total? Do you know?
We don't have a specific number yet. But roughly 64 million are in our database currently, 25 million during the times of immigration, but that includes passing of multiple voyages, if they worked on the ship, if they were citizens. So I would approximate around 12 million as the total number for immigration during the years of Ellis Island, 1892 to 1924.
Wow.
Yeah.
And I know, over time, and a lot of people don't always realize this, I think, when they're researching their family, as we're researching those records, that sometimes people went back and forth several times. They would come to the homeland, they would, come to America and get set up. And then they would go back and pick up their family and come back, or they would go back for work, or, come back and forth. So, sometimes we find records multiple times for the same.
That was the practice at the time, depending on the nationality and, of course, the family. But very typical for the Italians. The men would come first, and they would find a home for the family. They didn't want to live in the tenements with their family. They would find a home for them first, and then the wife and children would come afterwards. Mm-hmm. And sometimes the husband, if he couldn't establish a home right away, he would go back and forth and bring money home. Yeah. Interesting
stuff. So I believe that you've got this database online. Can you show us a little bit about that and how we can research as genealogists?
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, what I'd really like to share with everyone today is not so much the techniques that a genealogist would use. It's a completely different approach when you come to the History Center. What I train my staff and what we try to do for the public is teach the teachers so that they can teach others good practices. And it's not so much what you learn as on the technical side about databases and genealogy, but it's more about the oral histories.
So I know you have a website where we can search for records. Maybe you can give us a little demonstration of how that works. And well, first tell us where this website is.
We actually launched a new website this past month, and it's statueofliberty.org. So you can log on to there, which we're going to do right now, and I can show you how it works.
Fabulous.
Awesome. So if we go to passenger search on our website, it'll ask you to type in a first name and a last name. So we'll go ahead and type in the name of the passenger we're looking for, click results. And there are none. And that is not at all unusual. And there's many reasons why we won't find it at the first try. So the names are going to be the traditional spelling of the name of the passenger when they purchase their ticket. So one of the very famous myths of Ellis Island is that the names were changed here, and it's absolutely untrue. Nothing was documented here. If anything, the pursers were checking all the documents before signing off on them, and then once they made their way down the Hudson to Ellis Island, it was the inspectors who worked at Ellis Island who had to, again, check the information with the immigrants. So Names were filed by the immigrant when they purchased this ticket. Just like if you were on a JetBlue flight today and you were purchasing a flight will have a manifest and your name is as you purchased it. And that's the same concept. So it's a traditional spelling, and also there could be some alterations due to the time that it was purchased, and it may have been documented wrong. There could be a misspelling because of how it was interpreted for our database when it was indexed. So there's many reasons why, but I would say most of the time it has to do with how the immigrants spell their name in the past. So we're going to try this again. If you don't know what the spelling would be, the first thing we would do is just try the letter R, because perhaps for example, this immigrant is likely to be Eastern European, and so their name, if they were Jewish, could be a Yiddish first name. This is actually how we would find her in the database. Regina is spelled like this. When we click on the ship manifest, we'll see the microfiche to the right, and the manifest page will be to the left. And on our database, the program is going to select which slide it believes is the first page. Oftentimes you have to click to find the first page, just to the left or the right. And up on the top, it says we're looking for line number 7, and that's where we're going to see our passengers here. But you'll see there's a lot of information on the ship manifest, many details, some that you won't even know are important. For example, the numbers just above the occupations of these immigrants here, those annotations are administrative. They're correspondence, but they have to do with the time that they became naturalized citizens. So those have to do with the application for citizenship and the date that they were naturalized. Now, this is a manifest from 1920, and it's not unusual that it could take as long as 20 years, even possibly 40 years for an immigrant to have their naturalization work.
Can you point out the numbers that you're referring to?
Absolutely.
I don't see the headers here.
Yeah, so if you can see here, these are the numbers, and then beside them there's a date, 6/17/42. The top one says at the very right, 7/13/1936. So 16 years later, they're writing their naturalization information. So that's important, as well as to the left, you'll see a little more to the story about the immigrant too. All of these here to the left, beside the number of the line, or the line number of the manifest, has SI written, and then there's stamps on top that say admitted. SI is special inquiry. So they would have been pulled aside for additional questioning and may have actually had been detained, although I don't see any notations here of detention.
Can you show me with your mouse where the SI is? I don't see it.
Absolutely. So if we come just over here, it's at the very left of the screen.
Okay.
Those there say SI, and then the stamp says admitted. So it tells you more about what happened with this family and at their time, during their time at Ellis Island. For example, this is a young woman of 20 years old traveling with a 10-year-old and an 8-year-old. And women weren't always permitted to travel on their own. They would have had to have an escort. So it's likely, if we look at the special inquiry records, which are also available on our website, there should be a notation that says that they had to wait for perhaps an uncle to come or somebody to receive them before they could leave. And that is the #1 reason why somebody would have been detained or held for special inquiry.
Interesting stuff.
Mm-hmm. And
Good
that's just
stuff.
one example. Yeah.
I see you have a picture of the ship there as well.
Absolutely. We have photos of the ship, and a history is also often provided at the very bottom of the screen there. Okay, so I'm going to show you another example. We're going to look for Virginia de Pamphilius. Now, she might be listed with her name here together or separate. I'm going to try it together first. And that didn't work. So let's try this. And if this doesn't work, I'll put a DI in. No, there she is. So 1895 was her arrival. So that would be a customs list, which looks a little bit different. That's due to the fire at Ellis Island. All the records were destroyed. And what we've done is replace the records that would have existed at that time, the ship manifests, with what was known as the customs list that were held at the customs house, which is just across the water from Ellis Island. So we're looking for line number 416, and it says it's frame number 467. 467 and 416. So let's go 410, 11, 12. Okay, so there she is there. She's 33 years old, female wife. There's not going to be a lot more information on this record, just that she's going to New York City and her cabin. Below her, you see we have the children, Felicia, we have Colombo, Amelia, the 2-year-old, and something you may not catch is right above her is it's an S. de Cristoforo. And he is in front of her because he is actually the gentleman of the group. He is her son. So Virginia de Pamphilius, that's her maiden name. Her true name, her married name is de Cristoforo. And it's not unusual that people will have trouble looking for Italians in our database because the husband comes first and then the women and children travel afterwards. And women often are found in the database with their maiden names because that was the practice at the time. So
wow, so that could actually be a problem if you don't know the maiden name.
Correct. So
interesting stuff.
Mm-hmm. And also, Virginia's actually been abbreviated here, and that's not unusual on a customs list. This was indexed with her full name, but truthfully, it's a VING. So you'll find that a lot of the customs lists will say PTK or PAT for Patrick. So you'll want to use a first initial if you're having trouble finding the immigrant in the database. But this is one example of a practice at the time. So it's good to know a little bit about where your family was from and the history of the immigration process, because it'll help you find the records too.
Now, are there, is there like a little cheat sheet somewhere that has acronyms and definitions or
Yes,
abbreviations? Really?
yes,
Cool.
we make it available on our website. Yeah.
I can also, I'll leave a link for all of these things in the show notes if anybody's wondering.
So if we go to view our educational resources, I'm going to also show you here that we have videos you can use that will guide you to how you can do your research, as well as how you can get help with your research. And then if you click
I've
here.
seen some of these videos. They're fabulous.
Oh, thank you. So if you click here under resources, that will bring you into Genealogy Primer. And that's where the link is found for passenger search tips and tricks.
All right, and I will leave a direct link for this in the show notes.
Absolutely. So there's an introduction, how to use it, what years it's available, like beginning in January 1st, and then some of our pro tips as you go. And this guide is, I think it's like 11 or 13 pages long. And it tells you how to use filters, how to use our wizard, because many times people have over 1,000 to even over 10,000 possibilities. And so it'll guide you into how you can narrow down your search options.
Nicely done. So this looks like a PDF, right? So somebody could download this?
Definitely.
Okay, very cool.
Yep. So
go ahead.
Oh, also, as you had mentioned, we also have manifest markings and annotations. So that could guide you as to what more is on the manifest than what you would see with, a first look. So
now,
yeah.
That's worth the price of admission right there. Right? Because we're always looking at documents going, what does that little thing mean? You know, whatever that is. So good job.
Yeah.
Nicely done.
Hmm.
So let me ask you this. Are these records that were, you've been searching here, are they available elsewhere, like Ancestry or Family Search or any of those other guys?
Yeah, absolutely. We're a partner with Family Search, and so they're available on Family Search's website, as well as any commercial partners such as Ancestry, MyHeritage, Find My Past. Yeah.
Okay. All
Mhm.
right. So it may be an advantage though to come over here and do a little super sleuthing too. I always tell everybody, if you're not finding it in one place and those records are available elsewhere, to search it on another site, because the algorithms might be working different, or you may have typed something different,
Yeah.
but that document you just showed us certainly is going to help us understand some of the markings too as well. Very cool. All right. Well, I love the stories and the images. Are there other details that might help us with our research? Even if we're trying to now add color to our family history, maybe we found those documents and we want to get a little flavor of what it must have been like coming into New York Harbor, especially the first time. Do you have any stories online that a person might be able to get a little more oral history information?
Yeah, we we actually have the Ellis Island oral histories that were first crafted in the 1970s. It was a project that was developed on, with the partnership of the NPS and us, the Statue of Liberty Ellis Island Foundation. And some of my favorite stories, perhaps I'm biased, but some of my favorite stories are actually from the employees of Ellis Island, those who worked as verification clerks and those who worked as inspectors. And those are absolutely fabulous. So because hearing the oral histories of the immigrant is often like hearing any family history. It gets passed through channels of time and it can become a little fuzzy, where when you listen to stories from like our employers, this is something they did every single day. So they tell a story that's very, very true to the immigrant experience, because they live the immigrant experience every day as their occupation. And
I never thought of it that way. That is really kind of an interesting angle. It's kind of like today listening to the story about COVID from the nurse's perspective, right? So now, wow, I hadn't thought of it that way.
Yeah, and it's quite frankly, it's more accurate because through time, some of the stories do get embellished. Quite frankly, it's hard to say. I don't even like to say the words, but it's important that the public knows this. That when your great grandmother told you that she was 9 years old and all alone, traveling to Boston, when in reality she was 18 years old and meeting her brother in Hoboken, and then later going to Boston when she married. They're two totally different stories. And it seems like the tales kind of just get meshed together. They bundle up into one, and that story is now being told to the next generation and the next generation and to further progeny. And when you hear it through the eyes of someone who did it as an occupation, it's a completely different tale. It's because it wasn't just an experience, it was their duty and a privilege for them. So
well, I'm going to have to check out some of those stories. That sounds fascinating.
it's awesome. Yeah, and some of my videos I've made, my team and I make educational, like you said, the videos, and we try when we can to use the voices of the clerks and the secretaries and the inspectors or the commissioners, of course. And there's some great books as well written by commissioners over time. Ed Corsi has one of my favorite books, which is In the Shadow of Liberty.
Oh, wow. Good tip. I'll put a link to that book in the show notes as well.
One thing about Ellis Island is many people get this image that when the boats came, they docked in front of Ellis Island, which that's not quite what happened. The boats would come into the Narrows of Staten Island, and that's where they would dock. And at 6:30 or so, 6 a.m. in the morning, an inspector who worked at Ellis Island in the boarding division would go to the barge office and meet with the customs inspector for U.S. Customs. And they would board a tugboat, and on this tugboat, they would travel to the boats that were waiting in the Narrows, perhaps overnight or that morning. They go to the barge office first because they have to check the ticker tape to see if there's any boats there at all. And then once they get there, they would climb aboard and they would meet in the cabin with the captain, purser, and the surgeon, of course. And they would have them sign the documents that you see on our website in between the microfiche pages. This is the validity of the document to swear that they're been recorded truthfully. And then once they do that, they actually are processing the first cabin passengers and the second cabin passengers and U.S. citizens aboard the ship. They were not processed at Ellis Island unless there was some reason that they had to be taken to Ellis Island for further inspection, perhaps for medical reasons. And of course, the reason why they stopped there first, other than to meet with the boarding inspector, the most important reason is for quarantine. So if there's any contagious diseases found on board, they would have to first go to the quarantine islands. And so as they're going down the Hudson to their pier, whatever pier belongs to the steamship company, whether it's the White Star Line pier or the Red Star Line pier or the Cunard pier, that's the time that they're doing the processing. And then once they actually dock and everyone's been processed and they're free to go, steerage passengers have been given a manifest tag to wear. And this is to help with the process at Ellis Island, because they will be at Ellis Island from any point of 2, 3, 5 hours or more. And so it's to help speed up the process, because they've already had a very long journey. And they have to take a barge or like a ferry. They have to take it to Ellis Island and then be processed at the island itself.
Wow.
The process begins in the baggage room. They could pay to have their baggage kept, or they're going to lug it on them. And quite frankly, that's another imagery that people do picture about Ellis Island, is that they have these big, beautiful trunks. But many immigrants had sacks. They couldn't afford a trunk. So they're carrying their sack on their back, and they're climbing up, and they're going through the first part of the inspection. It's known as like the 6-second inspection, and that's when the surgeons are checking to make sure there's nothing wrong, and that's where the chalk actually happens, where they get marked. If they get marked, they go to the doctor's pen. This is all depending on what period in history that you're talking about, because
Right.
it happens at different times in history, but and it's in the peak times that there were more and more like stages to the immigrant process, such as the doctor's pen. So not everyone came to Ellis Island that was aboard that ship, including the U.S. citizens. And that's something that won't change as far as how people search on the website, but it does change the story, doesn't it? And I'm all about oral history. So the more you know about Ellis Island and the immigrant process, the more you'll know about the experience your ancestors had.
Great story.
Mm-hmm.
Fantastic. That is That was awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, of course. Most people don't think about like that they're climbing up a rope and they're meeting with, in the cabin, the grand saloon. They're actually in the grand saloon doing the processing. So it's kind of neat, right?
Yeah, it's very cool. Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate you taking the time today. I know we have probably taken more time than we should, but I really, really appreciate you spending the time and give us a little education about Ellis Island, and maybe we'll get you back one of these days.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I can go on forever. If you have a different topic, like myths, I would be happy to.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you so much.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you, Jackie, for a great interview. We really appreciate it. For the viewers at home, links for everything that we talk about are in the description box below the video and at genealogytv.org. If you like what I'm throwing down, please consider becoming a channel member or a patron. Again, links are in the description below, or you can click the join button here on the YouTube channel. Well, it is time for you to go find your immigrant ancestors. So until next time, keep on climbing your family tree.